A very good day to all of you. In this lesson, we are going to learn how to write a summary. I believe many of you have learned or already know how to write a proper summary. In academic writing, it is crucial for us to be able to write a good summary. And uh, we need to know on how to write a good summary for a few reasons. But before that, what is a summary? So summary or summarizing uh, is a piece of writing that we write in order to summarize a longer text. For example, we have a long article of a few pages, and when we write a summary, that means we take all the main or important points in the article and we put them all in one paragraph. So that means summary will summarize a longer article into a short one, into a short paragraph by including only the main important points for people to understand what the longer article is all about. So imagine if you're watching a movie. So a movie is quite long. So it takes normally 1.5 or 2 hours. So let's say if your friend asks you what the movie is about, the movie that you have watched, so you don't go about 1.5 or 2 hours to explain to your friend what the movie is all about. So what you do is you only take all the main points that you can recall from the movie and you summarize all the main points into 5 or 6 points, and then you tell to your friend about the movie in possibly 5 or 10 minutes. So that means you summarize the movie into 5 or 10 minutes instead of 1.5 or 2 hours. So summary is a shorter version of a longer text. For example, if you are reading a novel, so if you have finished reading a novel of maybe 100 or 200 pages, so when you want to explain to people what the novel is about, what the story is all about, you don't go and explain every single page. So what you do is you summarize, you take only the important points and you tell people the important points in a few minutes. So the same goes to articles. So normally when we are doing our assignments or tasks, we have to read a very long article um, or a very thick book. So when we have a group discussion, for example, so what we do is, let's say you have a group discussion, you need to do an assignment or a task given. So you divide the task. So each person in the group will go and find an article or a book regarding the topic that you need to present. So you give time like maybe 5 days, and in the end of the 5 days, all of you will meet again and explain what information you have based from your readings. So what you do when you tell people, when you share your information, you don't go and explain every single page from the articles or from the book that you have read, but you summarize only the main points and you tell people the main points in only a few minutes. So that is one of the purposes of summary. So that means you make a longer version of a text or a speech shorter in one paragraph or in a few minutes to save time. So there are some other reasons why we write a summary. For example, as you can see here, to understand the main point. So let's say you have a group discussion like I mentioned just now, to understand the main point so that each of the group member will read a longer article and take all the main points, summarize and tell the group members. So that means the group members don't have to read a lot of books and articles and waste time by reading a lot of pages. when they can only get the main points that you have summarized. And you can also get the main points, the main ideas of the books and articles from the one that they have summarized. Also, you write a summary because you want to understand the writer's argument. So you want to understand the article or the essay better. So you write a summary, you find the main points, and then you put them in a summary so that you can detect or you can locate what the main ideas are. To communicate understanding to others, like the group discussion just now, to present the context of the information, like when you have a group discussion again, and to cite the source and acknowledge the writer's idea in your own words. So that means you tell again what was mentioned in the original source or original article. So basically, as students, so the main reason why we write a summary is because we want to share the main points with our group members, or as part of our assignment or task given in the class. So how do we write a summary? So writing a summary is not difficult because summary is very short and concise. If it is long and you mention a lot of points and examples, that is not a summary. So that is an article. So summary is a summarized version of a longer article or a book. So how do we write a summary? So we have to follow a proper format when we write a summary. So let us take a look at the format of a summary. So first, what we need to have is, of course, the introduction. So introduction is very important. And then introduction can be in 1 or 2 sentences. So we don't have to make it long because this is not an essay, it is a summary. And remember, summary has to be brief and short, but brief and concise. So it has to be short, but it has to be concise, mention all the important points that need to be mentioned. So first we have the introduction, and then we have the main idea. So main idea number 1, main idea number 2, main idea number 3, 4, 5, or 6. So it depends on the length of the original article that you have. So each main idea is followed by a supporting detail. So main idea number 1, supporting detail number 1. Supporting detail will explain the main idea further. Main idea number 2 and supporting detail number 2 will explain main idea. So the same goes to point number 3, 4, 5, or 6. So let us take a look at all the format in detail. So what do we have for the introduction? So 1 sentence should be enough for the introduction. So normally for your introduction, you can start with a statement or a sentence like this. In the article, so you can put the name of the article, in the article, whatever, written by, and then you can put the name of the author. The author discuss or explains about this or that. So in the article, the name of the article written by the name of the author discusses or explains about whatever the article is all about. Or you can also say in the article, the name of the article, in the article you put the name of the article and then the name of the author explains in detail about this or that. So in the article, let's say global warming, and then the name of the author, maybe Michael Jordan, explains in detail about this or that, about what the article is all about. So introduction would be like the thesis statement. So it is the very main idea of the whole article. So what the article is about. So that is what you put here. So you have to read the article first, understand what it is about, then you can do the introduction. Let us take a look at one example of an article. Let's say if I want to make an introduction for my summary on this particular article. The title of the article is Lack of Sleep Link with Depression, Weight Gain, and even Death. So in my summary introduction, I will say, in the article, Lack of Sleep Link with Depression, Weight Gain, and even Death, the author, Meredith Melnick, explained in details about the relationship between lack of sleep and health problems. So that is what I would have in my introduction. So I will say that in the article, lack of sleep link with depression, weight gain, and death. The author, Meredith Melnick, explains in detail about the relationship between lack of sleep and health problem. So that is my introduction of my summary of this particular article. So now once I've done with my introduction, I would go to the main idea. So main idea is the main point of the article. So what do I have in the main idea? How do you know which would be the main idea of the article? So let's say this is the article just now, lack of sleep linked with depression, weight gain, and even death. And it is quite long. There are a lot of points being mentioned in this article. So how do you know which points are the important points so that I can mention in my summary, so that when people read my summary, they will know what this article is all about. So they don't have to read this article. They just spend their short time just reading my short summary. They can understand what this article is all about. So how do I know which should be the main point? So that means I'll have to read, or you'll have to read the article. So what do you think would be the main points? So the main points are the reason why the author wrote this article. So I think the main reason, one of the main reasons why the author wrote this article, because the author wants to say that people can die if they sleep less. From this paragraph, for example. So it says that people who sleep less than 6 hours per day were more likely to die than those who got a full night's sleep. So that could be the first point. And the second, third, fourth, or fifth point would be in other paragraphs. So normally, if it is a good piece of writing, each paragraph will have a point. and the second point will be in the second paragraph. The third point normally would be in the third paragraph, but not necessarily. So sometimes in one paragraph there are 2 points, or could be there's no point at all in one paragraph, because that particular paragraph is just an explanation of what the main point from the previous paragraph. So when I do this summary in the main idea part, so I think the first main point that the author mentioned in this article that I think is important for people to understand, that I think should be included in my summary, is that first, Meredith Melnick. So first is the first point. So first, she cited past studies that show people who sleep less have more chances to die earlier than those with enough sleep. So one main idea, it is enough to make it in one sentence. So you don't have to write in a lot of sentences, because we are not writing an article or essay, we are writing a summary. So summary should be short. So I think the first main idea is that people who sleep less have more chances to die than those who have enough sleep. So I put first because this is the first point. So it is important to have linkers like first, second, third, moreover, then, next, hence, to add to that, in addition. So those linkers are very important to make your writing flow nicely. So now that I have my first point or first main idea, I need to explain the first point a bit. So that is my supporting detail. So I have supporting detail to explain main idea number one. So supporting detail number one would explain main idea number one. So what would be the explanation? So the explanation you cannot just create. It has to be from the article. So because summary summarizes the article, we don't have our own opinion. We cannot include our own opinion in the summary. So what would be the supporting detail? So I think if I take a look at the article again, I think the supporting detail would be the explanation. So for example, people who sleep less than 6 hours. So the number of hours. So the explanation could be numbers, could be percentage, could be any statistics, examples, explanation, to explain the main idea further. So when you have a main point, you need to explain the main point. So I think the explanation is because those who get lesser than 6 hours of sleep per day develop a risk of dying younger 4 times than normal sleepers or normal people. So the main idea is people who sleep less, more chances to die earlier. This is because those who get lesser than 6 hours of sleep per day develop a risk of dying younger 4 times than normal people. So I have my main point, and then I explain the main point in one sentence, or you could also explain in 2 sentences, but you cannot make it long because you have to remember that this is a summary. So now I have done with my introduction. I have my first point. I have the explanation of the first point. Now I need to move on to my second point and the explanation of the second point. So after I have read the article, I think the second main point that the author wants to tell us is that the article also talks about studies that prove short sleepers tend to be more stressful than normal people. So when I put in a sentence, I put second because this is the second point. So secondly, the article or the author also talks about studies or researches that prove short sleepers, people who sleep less, tend to be more stressful than normal people. And what would be the explanation? So I'll have to go back to the article, to this article, to know what would be the explanation. So what would explain the point that I have just now? So after reading, I think the explanation would be Um, so we are talking about stress. So from the article, I found the percentage. So the stress level will increase 5% by each hour of lost sleep. And then I have two sentences here. High stress level will cause anxiety, depression, and psychological disorders. So I think this would explain the main point. So I don't create this. This comes from the article. So the main point number 2, is that short sleepers tend to be more stressful. And the explanation is that their stress level will increase 5% when by each hour of lost sleep. And they will also have anxiety, depression, and psychological disorders. So one sentence, but here I have two sentences. And now that I've done with my point number 2 and the supporting detail, I move on to my point number 3 and the supporting detail. So after reading the article, I think that the other point that the author wants to tell us is that the article also describes that sleep disorders can lead to weight problems. So this is another health problem because of lack of sleep. And the supporting detail is because it is mentioned that those who get less than 8 hours of sleep per night will tend to consume 2% to 3% more calories from food. So you will gain weight and have weight problems. So if you notice, all the main ideas will describe the introduction, the thesis statement. So the thesis statement is the author or the article explains in detail about the relationship between lack of sleep and health problems. So all the points that we have here talks about the relationship between lack of sleep and health problems. So you'll have to make sure your summary is logical. So if point number 3 is the last point, you can use linkers such as lastly or other possible linkers, or like finally, so once you have done with all the points, what you need to have, you don't need for a summary, no need to have a conclusion, so you can just leave it like that. So now I have followed the format. I have all the points for introduction, main idea number 1 and supporting detail number 1, main idea number 2 and supporting detail number 2, and main idea number 3 and supporting detail number 3. So when I put them in one paragraph, it will become like this. So this is what I have when I put them all together. So you can see the yellow in color is the introduction. The green is first point. And the turquoise is the explanation of the first point. And then I move on to my second point and the explanation of the second point. And then I have my third point and the explanation of the third point. And if you have more points, you can also include in your summary. The last point and the explanation of the last point. So let's say if it is a long article, there are a lot of points, you don't have to include all points. Let's say there are 10 points, but you don't have to include all 10. You just select which one is the most important, or which 5 are the most important and worth to be included in your summary. So the reason, the purpose, the main goal is that when people read your summary, people will understand the original article without having to read the original article or the original book. So by reading your summary, people have a brief idea of what the article is all about, so they can save their time just by reading your summary. So that is a good summary. So a good summary will give people idea what the original article is about without having to read the original article. So summary has to be short. So like this, it is one paragraph, but it mentions all the important points together with the explanation. So one sentence is enough. So one sentence for the introduction, one sentence for the first point, one sentence for the explanation, point number two, explanation, point number three, and the last point and the explanation, all in one sentence. And to make your writing looks nicer, you can add discourse markers. So words like similarly, nevertheless, still, on the other hand, however, despite, or in spite, or as a result, in other words, as a consequence, thus, hence, furthermore, besides, moreover, likewise, other than, firstly, secondly, thirdly, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seven. So those discourse markers you can use when you want to add the explanation. So with the explanation here, you can put discourse markers like this is because those who get lesser than 6 hours of sleep develop a risk of dying. Adding discourse markers will make your essay or your writing more seems more fluent and nicer. So that is all about the lesson. Thank you very much. See you in the next video.